Tonight we tell several true stories that happened in a single night. We've sometimes used actors and stuntmen, but everything you see and hear is based on the accounts of the people involved.
I've never been so frightened before, never.
I expected something very bad was going to happen. Thought it was the end, to be honest.
So if I'd have been there 10 seconds earlier, I wouldn't have been here now.
We were joking on the way up the road, saying what a silly night this was to go out, and to think that we were so close to death.
It was a bit like being in a battle zone, not really knowing when the bomb was going to go off.
At the end of the day, I knew I had one responsibility, and that was actually to get us home.
The wind was all round me, it was a black tunnel, I couldn't see anywhere.
The noise was just deafening. I couldn't hear myself scream. I remember just thinking, don't close your eyes, don't fall asleep.
I remember thinking, how am I going to tell my children that their mother was dead?
She just flew out the room. I'll never forget that, it's just impossible.
Earlier on today, apparently, a woman rang the BBC and said she heard that there was a hurricane on the way. Well, if you're watching, don't worry, there isn't. But having said that, actually, the weather will become very windy, but most of the strong winds, incidentally, will be down over Spain and across into France.
At the best of times, we tend to take the detail of weather forecasts with a pinch of salt. But 10 years ago, on the night of October the 15th, 1987, the weathermen got it spectacularly wrong. Within hours of Michael Fish's infamous broadcast, southern Britain was ravaged by hurricane-force winds, stronger than any that had been recorded for 300 years. Good afternoon. The worst storms for hundreds of years hit the south of England early this morning, killing a dozen people and bringing the whole southeast to a halt. They came without warning in the early hours of the morning, winds that hit 110 miles an hour and then went off the gauge. The storms have done millions of pounds worth of damage, blacked out cities and towns, blocked hundreds of roads, wiped out a whole region's train services, ships have capsized and run aground, buildings collapsed, and millions of people were prevented from getting to work. The Home Secretary, Douglas Hurd, has called a crisis meeting of government ministers this afternoon. Well, that's what I was doing the next day, having made a massive detour across London to get to work. Around 14 million people no doubt have their own personal memories of what was soon to become known as the Great Storm. It was a time when thousands of people put their own lives at risk to help others, and many more were left to fend for themselves. Some of the people who'll never forget that night helped us to tell their remarkable stories. We start at the Rushy Hill caravan site at Peacehaven in Sussex, which is managed by Leslie Hills.
We were in bed and we heard our garden furniture go up through the window behind us, in the caravan behind us. And then the van started rocking, so I said to Ellen, come on out. The night before we had 210 caravans. In the morning we had one left.
One of Peacehaven's 210 caravans was owned by Mahendra and Raj Gangwar from Surrey.
We went to bed, the wind started getting strong and the caravan was shaking.
There's something wrong.
It's all right. It's only a strong breeze.
No, Mahendra, it's not just a breeze.
Listen, this happens every year.
It did bother my wife a little bit, and she actually advised me that we should go back home. But I had watched the weather forecast and I was hoping that the wind had reached its peak and is going to die down. We heard some objects hitting our caravan. So we came out of the bedroom and my wife went to the front and I was in the back. I was near the kitchen actually.
Mahendra, are we going to be...
It is at that very precise moment that the chains broke with a mighty bang. I remember I was thinking, I'll just be crushed to death. And strangely enough, I started preparing myself to die at the time, will you believe? When the caravan stopped, it broke open and I could see the sky.
Where are you?
I thought that I'm all right, but perhaps my wife is not so lucky. I called her. I said, where are you? Can you hear me? And when there was no answer, then I felt that she was dead.
In deepest Kent, nature was about to take its course at the home of John and Julie Pell.
I was at full term in my pregnancy, so when I started getting the twinges, I knew that I had a few hours before I needed to get to the hospital. I got up, went downstairs and tried to occupy myself, so I started doing some counts. And then the contractions started getting stronger, so I thought I would wake John up, make preparations for getting to the hospital.
Yes, that's right, it's Mrs. Julie Pell.
I got showered and dressed into my best maternity dress and my new high heels. But looking back, that wasn't such a great idea.
I opened the back door and literally we were almost blown over. I thought, this is not funny. And the car was actually rocking from side to side. And I could feel there was some kind of problem. Although saying that, it was not until we actually went further into the journey that I discovered how big a problem it was. The Pembury Hospital is 3/4 of an hour away from our house. The journey I know very well. We travelled for about 2 or 3 miles, a few twigs on the road. Gradually, as we went further into the journey, the twigs became bigger. A few branches started falling off, and suddenly a major branch came along the road.
Oh, no.
Look, I'll tell you what, I'll back up and we'll go the back route through Ashes.
We turned round and I tried to make some shortcuts. It's that point we started getting more problems.
Vans are turning over all over the place. Out and down to the toilet block.
I saw someone standing near me with a torch in his hand. Him and I said, can I borrow your torch, please? Because my wife is buried under the wreckage of my caravan and I want to dig her body out. I remember thinking at that time, how am I going to tell my children that their mother was dead? How am I going to tell it?
Oh, what am I going to do, Lord? You're not there.
When we got there, we just wondered what we'd driven into. There were caravans in various stages of destruction. The large calagas bottles were just flying through the air, like beach balls. Sinks, clothing, everything was just sort of flying around the air.
Let's go and have a look at the injured people, all right? We've got another police car coming, and then we'll have a look through the vans.
Okay.
The site reminded me of a battlefield hospital. It's like a scene from MASH.
We had one man very badly injured. The office, what was, landed on top of him. His head was, it was just like an envelope flap. It had come off the top. It looked more serious, I think, than it really was. At the time, it was a bit frightening.
When I couldn't find my wife or her body under the wreckage, I went to the toilet block to find some help. And I couldn't believe my eyes.
Raj, here you are.
We looked at each other with incomplete disbelief.
I thought you were dead. I thought you were dead.
She was crying. She was really crying, hysterical. but she was there. She was thrown out of the caravan when the caravan had rolled only once. And when she saw that the caravan was still rolling, with me inside it, she thought there's no way I'll be able to come out of it alive. It is impossible to describe in words how happy I felt at that time. It was as if I was the luckiest person on earth, or as if all my wishes had come true, or all my dreams had come true. There was nothing left for me to wish for really. I was so happy.
Caravan parts from Peacehaven were blown up to 5 miles away and wrecked all 3 police cars that attended the scene that night.
Caravan sites were destroyed all along Britain's coastline, from Portsmouth to Clacton. Also vulnerable were campsites, electricity pylons, cranes, high-sided lorries. Aircraft were turned upside down at local airports. It was not a night for flying.
The storm hit the Channel Islands early and hard, and something was about to happen which seemed to defy the laws of physics.
It was a normal evening. Well, it was a bit different because of my mother and father's divorce that day. But as for the evening, I went to bed, went to sleep. The balcony door has swung open with a gush.
Kristen, you alright?
My mum heard the noise and she'd come upstairs to see if I was okay, as mothers do.
Are you alright?
Within that time of her coming into my room, a sort of suction of wind has got into my room and trailed its way around the room. And it was frightening. It was like something out of some sort of sci-fi sort of weird stated movie. It's hard to describe it. The wind wasn't a gush, it was more of a presence. It's lifted objects, for instance, a bedside lamp, but it's gone past these objects, gone on to the next object. They weren't getting blown around. I wasn't jumping out of the way of things flowing everywhere. It took its course, taking things with it and dropping them behind. And this was just happening to me in my room, and my mother's arrived at my door, and I was just sitting up in bed amazed and thinking, what is going on here?
We drove for another mile and a half, and literally small trees were starting to be uprooted at this point. We went further, and an oak tree had fallen down, completely blocking the road.
Oh no, look at this!
Well, we could get round here, I think.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Go with it.
To get round one tree, we had to go right round a field, and it was really very bumpy, and it was terrible agony for me.
Oh, it's all right, it's all right. Oh.
I was worried that I was going to have a baby in the car. I could feel the contractions getting stronger, and I did really start then to get into a state.
I was saying to my mum, no, don't touch the door, do not touch the door. I was actually thinking she's going to get her hands trapped. She's put her hand on the door handle, and within that split second, she just flew out the room. Literally flew out the room. I knew what was outside there. I knew that my neighbour's garden was a good 15 foot below, and it was concrete. And I knew that she's not going to have a nice landing here.
Mum!
Oh no, I'll never forget looking over, seeing my mum in that situation. I'll never forget that, it's just impossible.
Please answer me!
I started to shout, Mum, 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 you know, Mum, Mum, shouting at Mum, are you okay, are you okay?
Mum!
For what's felt like a long time.
Mum!
And I just thought, that's it, my mum's dead. Well, it's... Bye-bye, Mum.
As we went further and further, we were getting more and more desperate. John was driving the car into the trees to make a path through, and so the pain was getting worse all the time, but we felt we just had to get through. We couldn't be lost in the middle of nowhere.
Julie at this point was getting worse. She was starting to actually scream. I was beginning to panic. There was obviously no way that anybody was going to travel along that road for the next few days, let alone a few hours. The only option now was to go back to a phone box that we'd actually passed a few minutes earlier.
Please answer me! Please answer me!
Turns out she wasn't unconscious, but she'd had a hell of a smack. She just said, get me an ambulance and make sure your sister's okay. He's asked me, where is your mother? What's the situation? I described it. She's 15 foot below in my neighbour's garden, of which there was no access from my home. He was saying to me, there's trees down everywhere. It's very hard for us to get down roads. It could take a while. I've tried to wake up my neighbour. There was no response. By this time, my sister was awake and wondering what's going on.
Where's Mum?
Well, it's just... she's had an accident. I mean, it's nothing to worry about or anything.
Where is she?
She's outside.
I didn't think it was going to be a problem to go to the door and close it. The wind just came from behind and it just sucked me at such a speed, and it was like being in a tunnel. Just the wind was all around me. It was a black tunnel. I couldn't see anywhere. But I felt supported. It was the weirdest thing. I didn't actually think I was in that much danger when I was flying. And I thought, well, I'll be able to catch hold of something. That I didn't realise how high I was. I was flying above everything. There's a tunnel there. But the wind just seemed to change. 1 minute it was there and then it was gone. And that's when I fell. Obviously, the minute I landed, I knew I'd done a lot of damage. But as I was looking up, I saw the door had actually come off its hinges and it was tottering over the top of the railings, and I was so frightened of it falling on me. I mean, even in that amount of pain, I had to try to drag myself into the corner, and I was just hoping and praying somebody would come soon to help me.
I rang the hospital and I basically said to them, Julie's about to give birth. We're in the middle of the countryside, trees all around us, we're in trouble here. We need help urgently.
They're sending a helicopter, so it's all going to be fine.
Oh.
Yeah, they're going to ring me back about it.
Okay.
The relief just drained from my body. I thought, well, at least I've got some help now.
Hello? Yep, that's right.
The hospital rang back. We couldn't get the helicopter airborne because of the strong winds.
Hello? Hello?
The phone went dead at that point and we lost all contact.
The phones went dead, and so they didn't know what we were going to do, and we didn't think that they'd be able to help us in any way. We decided the most sensible thing to do was to try and get home at any cost.
Pembury Hospital had much the same idea, and locum Dr. John Bolton set out for Edenbridge with a police escort.
We started off obviously hopeful that we would have a fairly quick journey, but after about the first 100 yards there was a tree. I was beginning to realise it was going to be more difficult than I thought.
We had a call from somebody in James Road who'd been blown out of a window, which sounds very strange, and we couldn't really imagine what actually had happened. I'd only been qualified for 3 months, and it was my first real job. The drive to the scene was horrendous. There was all sorts of debris all over the road.
It probably took 10 minutes. This is a good hour as far as I'm concerned. And when he turned up, I heard them coming. It was just like, thank God for that. Thank you.
As soon as I heard an adult voice, I thought, oh, thank God, somebody's here. Somebody will be able to help us.
After finally waking up Pauline's neighbour, Robert squeezed down the narrow passageway to the rear courtyard.
When we first arrived, she was complaining of pain to her side, and we thought she had some sort of fracture of her pelvis. thing that I remember most about that night was the noise. The noise was just there. It was a bit like being in a battle zone, not really knowing when the bomb was going to go off.
I'm in complete and utter bewilderment. I don't really know what's going on. Within the blink of an eye, my mother's now lying 50 foot down on a slab of concrete in pieces. I sort of realised that she's in the best hands. I mean, what more can you do?
We realised we were going to have a problem to get her out of there. Unfortunately, the wall was out of the question, so then we had to think again. The passageway was very, very narrow. It was too narrow for our trolleys to get down. We decided to put Pauline onto our carrying chair. It wasn't ideal because Pauline actually had to sit in the chair, which, as you could well imagine, if you've got a fractured pelvis, isn't the most comfortable position to be in.
The pain was incredible getting me through that passageway. That still haunts me. They got me into the ambulance, and all I can remember seeing is their little faces, Christian Natalie. I mean, I was just so frightened for them. I was their security, and I was just being driven away in an ambulance. I certainly don't believe in ghosts, poltergeists, anything, but the experience was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It was a ghostly presence in the room. It was quite spooky. It was frightening.
From the Channel Islands to the North Sea, the storm caused havoc. Helicopters flew to evacuate the crew of a gas platform cut loose by the storm. Lifeboat crews carried out daring rescues in winds strong enough to blow a sea-link ferry aground. And swift action by port staff at Felixstowe averted a catastrophe when a ship carrying toxic cargo broke its moorings. Remarkably, there were only 2 lives lost at sea.
As the storm in Jersey reached its peak, hotel manager Steve Webb was fast asleep.
Hello, Mr. Webb.
Hello?
The pitch is big. The big problem in hotel. She's gone. She's gone.
What?
I recognised the voice of one of the night porters. He was trying to get over very quickly his point, which was, she's gone. She's gone.
Who's gone? Who's what?
And just in the background, I could hear the alarms ringing, and I thought, there's something's wrong. I'm on my way. Dived into the car, and then I was aware that there was some big wind outside. There was things happening. Things were being blown around. I got outside the hotel. There was quite a few tiles on the floor. The tiles were from the front of the hotel. So I looked up around. I couldn't see anything, no. So it was going into the unknown, really.
What's happening? Tell me what's going on. What's happening? What's going to happen is have a look at what's going on, and then we'll come back to it. We're going to get the torches, It won't be long. We'll sort it out. A couple of minutes, okay? I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Let me check upstairs. Fine.
Off we went to go to the staircase that led upstairs. The lighting wasn't working. It was very dark, and up we went. And as we got nearer and nearer the top, we realised that something was wrong.
Come on. Dear, look at it.
We could just make out the darkness of the sky, and it meant the roof had gone. It's a feeling that I've never experienced before, and it's something of amazement and just thought of, oh no, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I've lost the roof. I said, right, let's check the rooms.
Hello? Hello, anyone there?
Tried the first door. Again, looked up. Oh, no roof. I thought, this can't go on.
Next one. Hello?
I went on to another room, and I got to about the 4th room, and I opened the door, and the roof was missing. There was curtains flapping around, and wires hanging down, and I was about to go out when all of a sudden I noticed that there was a lump in the bed.
Remy, what are you doing in here? Hello? Come on. What are you doing? Hello?
Who the hell are you?
I'm the manager. Who are you?
I'm Andy.
There he was, fast asleep. And he'd slept through everything, and I couldn't believe it.
What's going on? There's been a storm. We've got to get you downstairs. Hang on. Let me give a rest. Okay. How you feeling? I'm all right.
Whether he was worse for wear or whatever, I don't know. But he was there. And it was certainly, I had to then get him out of there.
Let me get my stuff.
All he could think about was his possessions.
What do you want to take with you? Everything.
I want to get out. I want to take my case with me.
Okay, this is a suitcase, right? Oh, never mind, leave that.
Where's my watch? I don't want to go without my watch.
Here it is. Off we go.
I put a coat round him because it was obviously getting a bit cold, and I managed to take him downstairs to join the rest of the guests.
Off we go then.
I think he was happy because I never saw him again. Never saw him again.
What are you going to have? Dry martini soda, right. Oh, do you feel a bit better now? You okay now?
Once we were aware we got everybody, we did something typically British and opened the bar and got everybody a brandy, and there was quite a few of them took the offer up. And it was lovely. It was a wonderful atmosphere, if you like. It was almost, I mean, I've never not been through the war, but I would imagine it was something like that.
Just hope we're insured, eh?
The cost of putting the hotel back together was quite phenomenal. It was hundreds of thousands. When you see the pictures of the roof and the way it must have taken off and gone over the gardens of the houses next door, landing on cars and people, how anybody wasn't hurt, it was just totally amazing.
Across a quarter of England, wrecked homes and piles of debris were a common sight. If the storm had struck by day with millions on the streets, the casualty toll might have been colossal. As it was, 6 people died in separate incidents of roofs or buildings collapsing under the weight of falling trees or chimney stacks. Hundreds more were counting themselves lucky.
Among the lucky ones was Phil Spencer, one of 4 students who shared a flat and would soon share a vivid memory.
The first thing I remember is feeling some dust settling on my face. We'd come back from college, been for a drink, watched some TV and went to bed. So that was the first thing I remember. That was followed a few moments later by the most almighty crashing. The room shaking, the sound of the wind rushing through the room, and Warren screaming.
Oh, God! Oh! What's going on? Warren! What the hell's this? The roof's coming! I'm trapped! I'm getting off me!
2 things that were immediately obvious were the fact that there was no roof anymore. Secondly, there was an enormous piece of concrete on top of Warren, and he was in a lot of pain.
My legs! I can't move my legs! How am I supposed to live? I can't move my legs! I'm trapped! Get an ambulance! All right! Oh, God!
When I came to pull the door open, the handle came off from my hand, which was obviously a real moment of panic.
Somebody get some help! Get some help! I can't breathe my legs! What the hell? Get this thing off me!
We managed to get them open, and so we were able to get out and raise the alarm.
They finally opened the door and disappeared, left me there in excruciating pain and a pitch black with this wind blowing all around me. So I was absolutely terrified. Didn't know it was a chimney at the time, I really didn't know what it was. I thought, yeah, we'd hit by a missile or something.
We'd been driving home for quite a while, fairly slowly, because we couldn't really see what was ahead of us. And we could just hear this howling wind. We didn't hear any trees falling down at all, but we could just hear the howling of the wind. Then all of a sudden, in front of us, this tree just crashed. If we'd have been going any faster, it would have had us, I think. It just frightens you to think that we were so close to death at any second.
John? John? Oh, John.
How you doing?
What are we going to do?
Well, we can go forward.
No way we can get round that tree and I can't budge it.
Well, there must be another way.
Oh, there's not much point in going back anymore. I mean, it's just trees everywhere.
Oh.
They're down all over the place.
I want to get home.
Well, I think that's what we should do. I think the best thing would be to walk.
No.
I was actually afraid to get out of the car because I felt as soon as I moved, the baby would start to be on its way.
I don't see how else we're going to get there. I mean, it's only 2 miles.
No, I can't face that.
It's not far. We can walk where we can't drop. We can get round these trees.
You think we can make it?
Yeah, of course we can.
Well, we haven't got a choice, have we?
The ambulancemen who arrived to help Warren soon realised his condition was stable, but were unable to get him out. As luck would have it, one of the students flagged down a passing fire engine, which was nearby on another
The weight of the chimney stack, which was some tons, had gone on top of one and pushed the bed through the floor, and the floor itself was not stable. And one of the first decisions made was to get a crew working underneath the room to try and alleviate any further movement if possible. It was only when we started to actually look around and assess perhaps further details, and that above where the first chimney breast had come down, there was a large chimney breast of the very same size, which didn't look safe. You could actually visibly see it moving. We couldn't guarantee that it wasn't going to come down at any minute.
With the second chimney about to fall, reinforcements were summoned to help. Meanwhile, the first crew secured the fire engine, which was in danger of blowing over.
Listen to me, I want to take that.
What I think we ought to try and do is get an airbag in there and just try and lift it.
Right, clear the airbag through, please. Right, inflate. Steady. Unfortunately, the airbag was not only pushing the chimney stack slightly away from Warren's legs to make it easy, it was also pushing the floor down.
Wow! Rest there! Rest!
So we decided that that practice would be unsafe.
I could only walk for a few minutes at a time because the contractions were coming quite regularly. So when I had a contraction, I had to stand still as I could, because the wind was still blowing me, so that made it very difficult. But in that time, John would run ahead and find the best way over the next tree.
I didn't know what to do at this point. I didn't know whether to sort of try and carry her, but there was just no way of lifting her at this stage. All I could think of doing, perhaps my way, was actually pulling on her and pulling her up the road as fast as possible, which probably made it worse.
John and Julie were still 3 miles from home. Their would-be rescuers had barely made any progress at all.
I've completely lost count of how many trees there were, but we found the first batch and we moved them off the road. Then we moved on another 50 to 100 yards and we found another tree, and so it went on.
Next to arrive to help Warren was Senior Fire Officer Tom McKinley.
All right, Tom, what you got?
When I first went into the building, I didn't have a premonition, that's a wrong way of putting it, but I looked at it and I could foresee tragedy.
How are you, Warren? I've had a silly question. We'll have you out, don't worry. You won't lose your legs.
I was of the opinion that it wasn't a question if the stack came down, it was a question that the stack was going to come down. And anyone in the room would go with it. We put a safety officer purely to watch this stack, to give us an indication when he thought there was a serious risk of it coming down, and said that we would smash the stack up around Warren as quickly as we could.
When it began to break it off me, it felt like sledgehammers. But by then, I've been trapped for so long that I really did have visions of coming in with chainsaws and taking my leg off there and then, but I didn't really care what damage it did to my legs, as long as they got me out with them still there, really.
It was very difficult climbing over the trees, and I'd got this silly dress and these silly shoes on as well, which really didn't help, so they got quickly discarded.
Go through, Buerk.
Morally, I had to tell the crew that I thought that they might not get through the night. Now, the wind's picking up, it's not eased off at all, it's picking up, it's going to come down. Now, I'm not going to order you back in there. It's a volunteer-owned job, all right?
Well, who's going to get him out if we
Okay,
don't?
let's get on.
Okay,
Right.
It wasn't a brave thing. It wasn't something that I'm going to be a hero, I'm going to be brave. It was more of a thing that we are his only hope.
Oh, just hold it there a minute. Oh, my water's gone. I feel lousy. I can't breathe anymore.
My waters broke, and I felt that the baby would be born very imminently then.
I was trying to G Julie on. I wanted to get her back home because inside, the last thing I actually wanted was to deliver the baby.
It's clear. Let's get him out. Quick as you can. Come on.
We ripped him out of the bed and more or less slung him out of the room, almost in a panic really, because what you don't want is you don't want the last 10 seconds to be the 10 seconds when it all comes down on you.
Okay. I'll come round. All right, Lauren. Right with them.
Warren effectively is a very lucky man. He cheated death twice in one night, and there's not many people can say that.
2 more round. Right, down. Okay.
The relief was amazing. I went to see the fire brigade to thank them for basically saving my life. And they were telling their recollection of the evening, and they mentioned this other chimney, which I'd never heard of. And to find that men who don't know me, they're total strangers, had gone in there to risking their own lives to save mine. It was a very humbling experience. I was choked. It was, yeah, I couldn't believe it.
The emergency services dealt with an unexpected and unprecedented volume of 999 calls. Essex Fire and Rescue dealt with 5,000 calls in 2 days, a third of their normal annual total. It might have been more, but phone lines were down all over. Everywhere, additional crews were drafted in from off-duty shifts to put every available rescue vehicle on the road.
I've been in Milton for coming up to 18 years now. I haven't missed a day yet. It might have been a bit on the late side, but they've got it eventually. Loaded up my van, set off. The wind was beginning to get up a little bit. There was 1 or 2 dustbin lids floating about, 1 or 2 branches, 1 or 2 cable telephone wires flapping about, but nothing to stop the flow, you know, and was delivering the milk, no problem at all. Started to go down the hill towards my next calls, and there was one tree with a fairly big branch had broken off, and it took me about a quarter of an hour to get past it, but managed to just squeeze through. So I thought, I don't fancy doing that sort of thing again. Driven about 50 yards, and there was a tree across the road, fairly big one. No way will I get past there. So I thought, well, what shall I do? Sit here and wait, or head back to the depot, make a cup of tea or something. Decided that I would turn around and head back. Gone about 100 yards, and there was another tree. Oh, hell. So I was caught in between 2 trees. I thought, what am I going to do now? Then I thought, well, nobody's going to pinch the van because they couldn't move it. Started to walk back towards the depot. I couldn't have been more than about 15 yards away, 10, 15 yards away. It was as quick as that. The branches of the tree that fell couldn't have missed me more than a couple of 3 yards. It really was a frightening thing. Oh. I remember the next thing, I was laying flat on the ground and I think I shed a tear or two. Although there was nothing left of the cab at all, amazingly only 20 pints were smashed, and I sold the milk to the people in the village. I always say that I'll never win the lottery because I used all my luck up when I married my wife, but I think I had a little bit of luck left over that night. Somebody had some for me.
It's 7 o'clock on Friday the 16th of October. The headlines this morning: severe gales overnight have wreaked havoc over southern Britain.
The appalling weather has led to scores of accidents throughout southern England. 2 firemen were killed when a tree blew onto their engine at Highcliffe in Dorset. Winds of up to 110 miles per hour have been recorded on Guernsey, and in London of 94 miles per hour, the highest since records began.
No, it's not often we can use the word chaos without a slight twinge of guilt that we might be exaggerating the situation, but there is no exaggeration this morning. The south of England is in a state of chaos.
That's how much of Britain woke up to the news. But in those early hours, millions of people struggled to come to terms with the devastation on their own doorsteps, unaware of the scale of it. In all, 19 people lost their lives, and thousands more had lucky escapes. Among them, John and Julie Pell, who finally arrived home 6 hours after setting out on a journey that should have taken 45 minutes.
Get yourself into that bed. Here we go.
I just want to sit down.
Let me have your coat.
I was so relieved to get home. I thought I was safe and everything was going to be all right now. And I climbed into my bed, and then I started to feel strange pains, and I could feel that the baby was on its way, but it didn't feel quite right to me. And I began to get a little worried that I'd really need a doctor straight away, and we didn't know if there was one coming or if anybody knew where we were even.
There is a touch of the Dunkirk spirit breaking through the programme this morning. No lights in the Today programme office because of the power cuts, and there's a strong smell of diesel fumes drifting through Broadcasting House because we're operating on standby generators. What about damage? You said there'd been a lot of damage.
Yes, it's been widespread and the emergency services are at full stretch.
Southern and eastern region train services have been cancelled, and in some areas all major roads are said to be blocked.
We heard them shouting outside that the police had arrived, and 2 policemen came down the drive with the doctor.
So there was Mrs. Pell, a husband and a friend, and they were all, I think, anticipating to have to do a home delivery by themselves until I turned up, so I think they're probably quite relieved to see somebody they knew what to do.
So we started chatting to the doctor, and unfortunately he confided in us that he hadn't actually delivered a baby before, which didn't do a lot for our confidence at the time.
The army's been called in at several different places by fire brigades to help out.
And as you say, we haven't got the full picture yet by a long chalk. I mean, there must be an awful lot of things happening we don't yet know about.
Nick Marks, keeper at Howlett's Wildlife Park, didn't yet know about something that could become headline news.
Right, so I awoke early that Friday and realised that something serious had happened and basically needed to go around and see what damage had been done. The situation could have been just total catastrophe. As I approached, I realised there was a problem at Cairns enclosure. One branch had fallen on the fence, flattening the fence and spanning the moat, so effectively acting as a drawbridge for anybody inside. Obviously the most important thing was to keep Cairns in his enclosure. Should he escape, he would be so incredibly dangerous that there would probably be no alternative but to shoot him. Yeah, Steve? Steve? Yeah?
Can I have a chainsaw, please, to sort this branch out?
Okay, what, the big one? Yeah. All right.
The damage he could cause in quite a short space of time would not bear thinking about. And it would obviously have, it would have broken my heart to have to destroy him.
Be all right? Yeah, it's all right. Just get this out of the way. Okay, it's all right. Well, going to be a bit of noise. I asked for a chainsaw to be brought so that I could cut up the bough. Just drop it in the moat would have been sufficient. Just get it out of the way. It was just something to contain him, just for his own and everybody else's safety. I was extremely fond of Khan, and he was a dear friend, but he was a devil, and I certainly didn't want him to see my back. The whole episode, to calm Khan down, to send for the chainsaw, log the branch, and re-erect temporarily the fence, in all probability took about 20 minutes. Basically, there was no time for thinking about anything. It was just a question of pressing on, get one thing sorted just good enough, and then get on to the next. Basically, I reckon that we got off incredibly lightly. We did have a clouded leopard actually escape. They aren't particularly dangerous, and about a week later, he was recaptured totally unharmed. This in fact made the news, but it wasn't anything like the big story that Khan escaping would have been, and thank God that didn't happen.
The clear-up operation by householders, engineers, council workers and firemen was now underway and would take several weeks. But by mid-morning, Julie Pell's ordeal was almost coming to an end.
It was beginning to drag on rather too long, and under normal circumstances one would have gone on to a caesarean section. Obviously that's not possible at home. We're going to need forceps.
Shall I try and get some from the cottage hospital?
At one point it looked as if it was all going to go wrong.
I won't be long.
Miss Kell was dispatched to bring up the necessary equipment. But suddenly the baby started to move again, and it all turned out all right.
Whoops. The baby was born about 11 o'clock in the morning in the end. And just after she'd been born, John burst through the door with the forceps. And so he just missed it by minutes.
Isn't she gorgeous?
Which he was quite upset about, but relieved as well, I think. We called her Andrea Gale to remind us of the hurricane, as if we'd forget. I just hope she appreciates what we went through for her.
Well, Ian, you chaps were a fat lot of good last night.
I admit, we weren't forecasting hurricane force winds, and that's what we got, and that's what we will get maybe once every 50 years, maybe once a lifetime.
Well, are you weathermen just shrugging your shoulders as a result of all this, or is there an inquest going on down there at the weather centre?
Well, there is at this very minute, and there will be for the next several months. We are getting better and better. This one, just stronger than we thought.
Peace soon returned to Peacehaven, where stouter chains secure the new caravans, but the gangwars take their holidays abroad.
After 5 major operations to her broken hip and pelvis, Pauline Michel still walks with a stick. She avoids going out when it's windy. Despite being hit by a 3-ton chimney, Warren Lynch escaped with minor injuries. The second chimney stayed up until the builders pulled it down.
The real-life backstories from BBC News, a topical podcast, brings you the human interest behind the headlines. 5 minutes on. Listen now on BBC Sounds.
This week celebrating her 10th birthday, wonders what all the fuss was about.